still morning?
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
This is like surreal for me. Backstory. I was what Senator Poe was talking about. I'm a juvenile lifer. I served 100% of my sentence. And I came home and I'm still on parole for the rest of my life. Right? Don't feel sorry for me. I'm not here to solicit any sympathy. I just want you guys to empathize with our plight. And the plight is the structural violence that makes it okay to do this to kids. So I remember when I met Koki, I met Gail, and they came inside the prison and they asked a question that nobody ever asked, no adult in my life. And they asked me, what is it that you need that this place is no longer a reality in your life? And my answer was like, okay, where did I ever feel the safest? Like they said, I grew up in Camden. It is one of the most dangerous, one of the most violent cities in America. And the only time I ever felt safe was in school. So my response was, I need an education. And one of our first things to do was to make education mandatory in all New Jersey's prisons. Why? Because for me and my colleagues, Just, Ron Pierce, Maxwell Melvin, Parrish King, education would provide us with an opportunity as opposed to chances. And when we came home, we didn't want people taking chances on us. We wanted people to provide us with opportunities. So when they came inside Trenton State Prison, we were looking for an opportunity to do something with education, to say, all right, everybody is worried about being safe, right? It's a legitimate concern. But how do we bridge safety with, one, us getting healthy? We can't be safe if we're not healthy. By virtue of our health, we automatically become safe because health automatically does something to where, when I looked at where I'm from, Cherry Hill doesn't have the problems the city of Camden has. They don't have a public safety problem, nor do they have a public health problem. So through all the education that we fought for and the bills and the legislations that we passed,
It's in your list there.
yeah, 4202. And in that, Ms. Gail Muhammad came in and asked that we write a white paper on education. And we presented that when then Assemblywoman Bonnie Watson Coleman and other legislators toured 4 prisons. And we presented that based on the question that they asked. So education is my safe space, always have been. That's the only time I've ever felt safe, I ever felt valued, I ever felt acknowledged. So that was the route that we chose to go. And at that time, the Pell Grants were discontinued from the 94 crime bill. So we fought for 28 years to get education back in New Jersey prisons. And if you don't know, we are producing AAs and BAs on a massive scale. We're in 7 of New Jersey state prisons through NJ-STEP, based on the legislation and the work and the belief of these women and our legislators who voted to get this stuff done. Now, what does that mean? That means while we were inside the most toxic environments you could ever place a child, right? That was trauma building. You gave me an opportunity to steer away and refocus on something that would allow me to redirect and transform my life and the lives of thousands of men and women in New Jersey's prison system. So what happened? We began to become healthy through the tool of education. And then when you look at what we're doing, we're not going back to prison. We're on college campuses all across the state. But our communities now, when we walk back in them, they're still afraid. But then when they watch our work and what we do, so my thing is train the trainers. So my purpose when I came home was to say, nah, I don't just want to be trained. I want to be able to be trained to train people like me who are system involved and directly impacted. So there's no way you could know when I came home what I would need, because I was gone for 3 decades, 30 years. 3 decades. And the world that I came back to didn't exist. There were no cell phones, there were no internet in 1988. There were no Google and things like that. And here it is, I have my 7-year-old granddaughter teaching me how to set up a phone. She was born into this world. I was excluded from it. So rather than get rattled and things like that, what I learned from inside was the importance of building a network. But it began inside. But it also begins for our kids now, long before they become in contact with the juvenile justice system. So the social determinants of health, if they're negative, we already know what's going to happen. So our job was to reverse the school to prison pipeline and take it and make it prison to school pipeline. And we're very successful at it. We do a lot of work at it. And when we came back to Camden, I looked at my city and I remember being in a DOC transportation van and I cried. Because I remember my city how it was before it was bad, but it was worse. And I looked at the Walter Rand Transportation Center and it really looked like a scene from The Walking Dead. It really looked like that. And I just cried and I'm like, what happened? And what I saw was investing in social structures without investing in people created this environment. So the poverty, the abject poverty became even more, and then the violence. So I remember Koki asking me about guns one day, and I told her, she was like, well, what would make you run around the streets in Camden with guns? And nobody had ever asked me that. And at that time, I didn't know anything about trauma. But I remember that I was constantly responding to something that happened to me at 13, and adults paid another adult that I looked up to execute me. So here it is, I was assassinated. I was slated to be assassinated at 13 years old. I was a baby. And in my mind, every time I would get into a conflict or an argument, I would think it was going back to that moment, but there was no services for me. Now let me tell you what I'm doing now.
We got about 1 more minute.
Okay. I am now in treatment and helping other people get in treatment. I don't do re-entry, I do new entry because the world is new for me and for the people that are coming out. I work with juveniles. I deal with not just cognitive behavioral stuff, but emotional, trauma. And my goal is to use education as a platform of transformation. So I take them to the college campus. They go, you used to be doing this and that. How? I said, yeah, this is my new hood. This is where all my homies are now. I do public speaking, and I'm gonna end with this. If anybody in this room believes a cage is the answer, I'm here to tell you I'm sitting here today after 30 years of incarceration in spite of a cage. I am an outlier. I am not the rule. Most of us come home damaged, hurt, and unrepairable, so they think, until they come across our work. And anybody want inroads into a kid or a child, all you have to do is sit down and ask one question: what do you need to be the best you possible? And what does that look like? Without asking them that question, it's just throwing resources at people that is not specifically oriented to their purpose and what they're trying to do. I was fortunate to be asked that. I'm a graduate student at Rutgers Camden. I'll be finished by the end of this, the fall semester, and I'm going on to my PhD in criminology and sociology.